That is not good. Good afternoon, everybody. Mike Silliman here at the Abold Race Shop. It's Saturday afternoon. We had a very productive day here in the shop today on the old car and the new car, which you can just see the front of it in there is getting a lot of attention and coming along good. Jeff's going to step in here today. We're going to talk about the ratioed rear suspension on the Supermodified that Jeff runs. Ratioed suspensions are nothing new to Supermodifieds. They actually go far back as the 70s. First one I remember was 1973 when Ed Close brought the Hemi Hawk Supermodified up. Everybody looked at the big 1400 horsepower twin turbo Chrysler motor, but that had a ratioed front suspension in it, and a couple other cars that did over the years, but this one's a little bit more familiar in the rear, and Jeff's going to step in and talk about it. Before we do that, we'd like to thank our sponsor today.
Yeah, today want to give a big shout out to Butch Lamb and Radical Race Gear, giving us a lot of help over the last year and everything there. Got a brand new suit after damaging my other one last year. It helped us out there, and just some parts and pieces along the way and everything. So Butch and his whole company have been a huge help to us along the way here. So just want to give them a big shout out and just kind of present our whole video and based on Radical Race Gear today.
And thank you, Butch, for all you do. And you'll see Radical Race Gear's information here. If anything you need, suit, fire suit, crew suits, the Easy Up awnings that he builds are just tremendous. Great guy, longtime friend, and great friend to the racing community. So we're going to reposition here, and we'll step in and show you this. Okay, we're all repositioned here, and this ratioed suspension is actually uses the use of transfer bars in the back. It's very familiar to us. Most of the cars at Oswego Speedway are running this type or something similar to this suspension, and this came out. Jeff's going to tell you the history of this particular type right here.
Yeah, one of my favorite cars through history is one of the coolest cars to come out. You know, in my as I was growing up, was the Clyde Booth Supermodified, where the kind of the new aero generation that was starting to come out. I believe it was 1998, with my dad behind the wheel at that point. I think it had been tested and stuff before that a little bit. And then he was the first one to go race it and everything. So transfer bar, rear suspension. Most of the cars at Oswego utilize this type of suspension. A few other cars, some of the extreme cars and some of the other built cars will use some other form, but most of the Hawk cars and a few of the other types have decided to use this one. We use this suspension front and rear in the car. We're going to talk a little bit about it here as far as how it works, the parts and pieces of it, and then how the ratio and everything kind of works there. So we can kind of jump into that. And then obviously, as always, if there's any questions that arise from that, we can kind of ask them in the comments and everything, and then you know, go from there, and hopefully we'll answer them as best we can in the next video or going forward. So first we'll talk about some of the parts and pieces for it, what goes into it. So you have this outer arm right here that typically would, you'd have your rear end in the car, and then on this side you'll have a bird cage that'll attach the suspension actually to the rear end. Unfortunately, we were planning on having the rear end into the car today, but as Michael tried to show you at some point there, we found that we had some issues when we pulled it apart. The ring gear was starting to come apart and some problems, so did not unfortunately get it together today, but that'll be in the works with it once we get some more parts coming. So, but anyway, this is the outer arm that goes there. This is roughly about a 16-inch arm. you'll see on this part of it's actually bolted to what's called the transfer bar. Mike will show you there. It's a nice, good, thick bar. This is a 2-inch bar, a very thick wall thickness, and this runs right through this transfer tube, which is where all the outriggers and everything connect to. And then this is the inner part of that bar that is now connected to an inner arm, which is roughly about an 8-inch arm. So you have a 16-inch outer arm, 8-inch inner arm. This connects to your shock, which would normally have a spring and everything with this. We just have one on here for demonstration purposes. And then which connects up to your frame. And that is your suspension. This is going to be the same thing at all 4 corners. The front's a little bit different, but roughly the same idea with it. And I'll kind of show you here. So as the chassis would roll or go over a bump or do anything like that, typically the chassis would be moving. This would be technically staying in place with the tire. But you can see as this moves up and down through here, that motion is transferred right through the transfer bar into the inner arm and activates your suspension. And the reason that a lot of cars run this one or decide to run this, it packages your suspension into the chassis, keeps it nice and safe. Aerodynamic wise, you have a lot less items out in the air. You don't have an outrigger up in the air with a shock and a spring hanging out. Moves all the weight into the chassis mostly. Hi, Johnny. So there's a lot of benefits that go with that. Drawbacks to it, it's a pretty heavy suspension, but the weight's in a good place. It's very low in the car. So there's always pros and cons to every type of suspension, and that's one of the things that we run there. So as Mike mentioned before, this is a ratioed suspension. So you might hear before where some people have a 1-to-1 suspension, 2-to-1, 4-to-1, things like that with it. This is technically would be considered a 2-to-1 suspension. Where that comes in is you have this 16-inch arm, that 8-inch arm, obviously 8 being half of 16. But I'll show you here what happens with this as best I can. So
I'm going to put mine right here.
Sure.
And I'm at, let's see where I'm at. I'm at like 17.
Okay, so we're roughly about 18 inches right here. So I'll go ahead and move this up 1 inch. So we're at approximately 19 inches now to the center of that eyelet.
And we went 1/4 inch.
It should be about a 1/2 inch.
Without the dog kissing me, we're right at a 1/2 inch.
Yep.
Yeah.
So essentially there, for every 1 inch of motion you have on the outside here, you get approximately 1/2 inch on the inside. So the reason for that being, this is if this was turning in a big circle, this is drawing a much bigger arc around it doing that. So for the distance this has to travel for there, you're getting about half the distance inside there. Figuring out spring rates and things like that gets a little more complicated. There's a little more factoring to do in there and everything when you're figuring that out. So that gets to be, like I said, a little bit more complicated math and everything to actually figure out what your spring rates are. But that might be for a later video sometime. But that gives you the basics of how the suspension works in these and how most of the cars work. This is one thing I get a lot of questions on, especially when we travel, because this is, for us at the Oswego Speedway, it's very common. To other racetracks and other racing series, it's very foreign. So a lot of people always get a kind of a kick out of our inboard suspensions on these cars. So, but that's in a nutshell. And like I said, if there's any questions that arise from there or something that anybody wants to know, leave some comments and everything there, and we'll do our best to try to answer them for you.
That's great. Great explanation. And so we'll wrap it up with here. If you haven't visited our Facebook page, you can like our Facebook page as Team Abold Racing. We also have our YouTube channel out now, Team Abold Racing. If you can get on, like it, share it, enjoy the videos. We'll try to keep putting more out for you. Any ideas you have, anything you want to see, just send a message. We'll try to do that. We're going to try to get Pat on here and do an interview here in the next week or two. If we can slow him down, as you can see in there, he's just still working away.
We might have to have a contest to see who wants to tell him to stop and come over and do that. Somebody might have to win that contest. It's not going to be one of us.
Yeah, that's what I think. We'll have to tie him down, but we'll have to do that. We might be able to get more out of Johnny than him right now, but he's just working away. He's doing an amazing job down here. So, take a look at our YouTube page, like it, share it, and subscribe. It's free. And Send us all your comments, and we'll leave it for there. Everybody have a great day.
Thanks, guys.